Hey guys, so last week we took a detailed look at the brand new Gran Turismo DD Pro from Fanatec. Now, we covered a lot of detail in that video. We looked at the hardware and a lot of the comparisons between the experience that you get with a CSL DD on PC and the experience with a PS4 or PS5. We looked at a couple of different simulation titles, a couple of simcade and arcade titles as well. So if you're interested in all that detail, check out the video that we did last week. I'll link it above my head for you right now. But one of the things we didn't include in that video was GT Sport, and I'll explain the reasons why we didn't include it in just a moment. But today we're going to be doing exactly that. We're going to be focusing in on Gran Turismo Sport, talking about the experience upgrading from a Logitech G Series wheel, and focusing in a little bit more as well on the wheel itself, talking about input mappings, ergonomics, and all those details that I know you guys are wondering about. So let's get going. So before we get started here, just want to quickly explain the reason why we didn't include GT Sport in the original review, because there are a few conspiracy theories floating around. A few people thought that maybe Fanatec had asked us specifically not to look at it or something like that. So just wanted to clear that up before we get started. There weren't any restrictions at all on what we could and couldn't do in the review. The reason why we didn't include it was actually, there was two reasons. First reason was we only actually received the PS5 that we ordered for the review a couple of days before the video was due to go out. And I simply just didn't have the time to get my head around GT Sport, which is a game I'd never played before shooting the review, and I didn't want to talk about something in the context of a video like that I didn't really have any experience with, because I know that people are a lot of the time, basing purchasing decisions off the information that we're giving and, the opinions that we're giving in these videos. So I wanted to make sure I had enough time to really get my head around it properly before really talking about it. Other reason as well is that this product is being released in conjunction with Gran Turismo 7, and we made the decision here at Boosted Media, nothing to do with Fanatec, that we kind of thought in the context of a first look at a review video like that, we didn't want to blur the lines between the experience that you get with GT Sport and what the experience might be like in GT7. And I guess in other words, we didn't want people expecting that the experience with GT7 would be identical to what it is in GT Sport. And we didn't want to make the video super long by, explaining all those things in that video. So we just kept it focused on the, things that we could compare between the experience on PC that we had with the CSL DD and what we're experiencing on the PS5 that we have here with the GT DD Pro. So that's the reason why, just to explain that. But anyway, let's get on now and do some driving. Okay, so we're here in Brands Hatch in the AMG GT3. Let's try and dispatch of this noisy Mazda here. I assume it's a rotary, and that's the reason why it's screaming like that. Actually not sure what that car is. It's cool, whatever it is. But anyway, first thing I want to say is don't judge me too harshly on my driving skills here in GT Sport, because I am brand new to the title. Only a couple of hours in, so still getting my head around all the physics and everything. It is quite different from what I'm used to. But really what we're focused on here today is just the, the force feedback details and all those things, which are obviously important when you're deciding whether you want to upgrade or potentially look at buying this wheel as one of your first wheels. So try and get down the inside here, these two. We are driving with the Boost Kit 180 here as well, so that gives us a 8 Nm peak torque. The standard 90 watt power supply that comes with the package by standard, if you don't buy the Boost Kit add-on, is 5 Nm. Now, we've already covered the differences between those two in the previous videos. It's exactly the same here as well, so there's no need to go through all that again. Check out that video if you want to understand the difference between the two. But let's focus in on the quality of the force feedback here. One other thing I should mention as well, we are running the load cell kit here as well. And again, if you want to see more details on that, check out our CSL pedal review, which we put up last week also, which takes you through all of that. So, look, straight away, what I'm feeling here, and remember we did start off running with the Logitech G923. So all of the driving that I've done up until this point, recording this, has been done with the G923. And look, that felt quite good. I did find that, it did have that typical kind of clunky feel to it, the rattly feel, kind of like having a ball in a cup, like a golf ball in a cup, and rattling it around when you go over bumps and, feel textures in the road. So while you do get the feedback that you need to drive quickly, and, there's plenty of people that are perfect examples of, the ability to drive very fast with a G923. So by no means am I saying you can't be fast with one of those, but definitely lacking in the detail, even, in the PlayStation environment compared to PC. So this is an obvious upgrade straight away. You feel, a lot more smoothness in the force feedback. All those little details that you were feeling in the Logitech wheel are obviously more amplified, even that we're jumping from about 2.5 Nm up to 8 Nm here. But in amplifying those details, you're not getting any graininess or any funny business going on like that. So everything is really nice and smooth. There's no notchiness going on at all. All that, you know, all the smoothness that you would expect to have with a high-end direct drive wheel is all there, and it actually does feel a little bit smoother to me than the DD1 and the DD2 do on PC. So obviously there's quite a bit of dampening going on inside the game itself, I would imagine. And of course we do have access to the tuning menu, which we covered in the previous video too, which you know, explains how you can go in and fine tune a lot of those settings through the tuning menu to really sort of dial it in to feel exactly the way you want. But yeah, there is quite a bit of dampening going on, which makes it feel nice and smooth. But we do still have that real nice detail there, and I can feel all the road textures quite fine. You know, you can feel that graininess in the surface of the road, which is what you would feel in a real car, not graininess in terms of motor characteristics. So that all feels really good. If I run out onto a ripple strip like so, I get a nice sort of judder in the wheel as well. It doesn't feel in any way unauthentic. It feels quite realistic. And yeah, look, the experience, what I'm getting here in GT Sport is, you know, quite similar to, I'm trying to think, probably I would say Automobilista 2 or Project Cars 2 would probably be the closest in terms of the force feedback feeling that I'm getting here if I was to compare it directly. I mean, it isn't exactly the same, but those would be the closest. iRacing definitely has a little bit more detail in the car's suspension and the movement of the car itself, you know, interactions with the tires and things like that. I think that's probably where this is lacking a little bit in comparison, but I think those are characteristics of the game rather than the wheelbase, I guess, is the main point. So yeah, in terms of the wheelbase itself, it feels really good. I think it's definitely an upgrade from the G923, which obviously you would expect, but whether or not it's worth the upgrade specifically for playing GT Sport, hard to say, because I think that, you know, people that are quick in GT Sport with a Logitech wheel are probably going to be just as quick with this. I don't think it's necessarily going to make you faster. Remembering again, we are just talking about the wheelbase itself. We're not even talking about pedals here. Pedals are the thing that's going to make the ultimate difference when it comes to speed and consistency, but it definitely makes for a more immersive and more enjoyable experience, no doubt. So as we finish the race, I'd say that's the conclusion there. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here because, again, we have done those other videos where we've gone into all the really fine detail about, you know, all the little motor characteristics and details like that. So really the takeaway here in terms of the driving experience is simply that, you know, you're feeling all the same things that you would feel with a cheaper wheel, but it feels more refined, it feels more detailed, and it feels stronger overall. So let's slow things down a little bit now and really sort of focus in on the finer detail of exactly what we're feeling through the wheel. Hard to concentrate on those little things when you're flying around in a GT3 car, let's be honest. So we're in the MX-5 now around Tsukuba. Let's have a little bit of a cruise here. Again, we're not focusing on lap times or anything like that. Just want to sort of see what I'm feeling through the car, through the steering. So as we turn in, I feel the weight of the car kind of trying to force me towards the outside, so we can feel that spring force through the wheel. And it feels quite authentic as well. It doesn't have that sort of Logitech feeling to it where it, you know, just feels a little bit robotic and clunky. So switch downshift to get the back end to come in a little bit, get the power down. Feeling a little bit of force trying to sort of rotate me around there. And again, the texture in the road surface does actually feel quite good. I mean, you're feeling the little tiny textures that you need to. It's not kind of throwing you all over the place. And I'd say the 8 Newton meter power supply is definitely what I would want to use. If I was really sort of playing this game all the time and really wanted to get the most out of it, I would say the 8 Newton meters is absolutely worth the upgrade over the 5. And we covered that already in the previous video, so we don't really need to harp on about that. But if I drive out onto the grass here as well, you're getting that sort of slight texture through the wheel. It doesn't feel super granular, so it's not as detailed as what we have on PC games in, you know, little instances like that. But if we get up on a ripple strip, so up through here, you do feel the weight of the car kind of clunk you over, so you are definitely getting the textures there. And yeah, I mean, it's giving me all the little details that I need to feel. I'm not really noticing anything more driving around slowly than I did in the GT3 car, to be honest with you, and I thought I might. But yeah, feeling a little bit more communication of the weight of the car, I would say, and just how it reacts. Obviously, this car has much more body roll than a GT3 car does as well, which is one of the reasons why I chose it. Let's get it turned in again. Yeah, I mean, it feels good. It's there's not really a whole lot more to say about it than that. It's, you know, I think the same observation that I had playing the other titles in the main review videos, you know, kind of coming across here as well. It feels very, very much like what I'm used to from, you know, some other sims in the PC world. So I definitely don't feel like we're missing out on anything coming across into a PlayStation environment from a PC, which is a thing that I was concerned about. I thought that maybe it was a situation where, you're coming across from PC, potentially inferior detail in the force feedback, but it doesn't really seem to be the case. I mean, what it comes down to is it's going to be title dependent. It's going to depend on the game and the quality of the force feedback in the game, rather than the platform itself, I think. So let's jump in a rally car on some dirt track quickly as well, just see how the experience translates there, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the inputs and ergonomics of the wheel itself. So Colorado Springs now in the Evo. Let's see how the experience translates across into dirt. So straight away I can feel the balance of the car through the wheel quite nicely. Remembering again, I don't have any other forms of feedback on this rig at the moment, so I don't have any motion or anything like that running. I'm relying purely on what I'm feeling through the wheel, but I do get a good sense of the movement of the car. I can feel the back end sliding around on me. I can catch the slides as well quite comfortably. And look, in terms of road texture, I'm not feeling granular detail in terms of things like, the dirt and the actual surface of the road so much. It's kind of just vibrating me around. But what I am feeling is the the undulation. So when I went over that bump just there, I could get the sense that I was going over something, and it's a hard sensation to describe, because you would expect that to normally be communicated through heave in a motion system, but the way the wheel responds to those bumps and the way you kind of feel the steering get light as you come over the crest is quite authentic, and it does really give you a sense of how the car's behaving. Just there again, when I lost the front end contact on the road or on the dirt, the steering did get nice and light, so I really did feel that, and it definitely feels more pronounced than it did on the G923. So I actually spent quite a bit of time on this track in the G923, although my driving would suggest otherwise. But I found that it did feel a lot more disconnected than this is feeling. So again, it's partly due to the smoothness, it's partly due to the extra detail that we're feeling, but mostly I'd say just due to the overall strength. Remembering again, at 8 Newton meters peak, we are running, almost a little bit less than, or a little bit more than 3 times, a little bit less than 4 times the amount of torque. And that's really, it's a combination of all those things, I think, which is making the overall difference rather than any one particular thing being a standout. But I guess the only other thing really to comment on here, just before we move on, is again with the granular detail that we do feel, even though it's not all that pronounced, it doesn't feel robotic at all. It does feel nice and smooth and dampened and authentic. So, whereas with the G923, it can feel, a little bit kind of janky and robotic, like we were saying before with the ball in the cup kind of feeling. It doesn't have that unrefined feeling with the GT DD Pro. So yeah, again, really happy with the experience on dirt. Let's just quickly do a little bit of drifting as well and see how we're able to control slides. So quick drift in the M4. Now I'm not a drifter by any means, so don't expect wonders here, but I just want to get a sense for how the transition is communicated through the steering. So I get a pretty good sense there of where the car is. I can counter steer and actually caught that pretty well there. Better than I expected. Let's see if I can continue that on or if it was a fluke. Get the car around, power down, slide it around, come on, feather the throttle. I looped it. Yeah, but when the car does slide, you do get a good sense of what's going on through the steering. So it starts to go sideways. You feel the point where it starts to bite, and you can control around there. And I mean, it's just down to experience. Let's give it one more try. Get down to second gear. So I'm balancing the car pretty comfortably there, and yeah, I mean, that worked quite well. For somebody that has no idea how to drift, I think that was all right. So yeah, I mean, at my elementary level of drifting, I feel like I'm feeling all the things that I need to feel to, get a sense of what the car's doing. And again, I'm already getting better at it. So definitely something that I can do a bit more practice at. But let's move on now. Let's talk about the ergonomics and inputs on the wheel itself. So let's have a quick chat about inputs. So we'll head over to our options menu and navigate across to controllers. And you can notice here, I am able to navigate the menus completely from the hat switch and the triangle, X, circle, and square that we have on the controller. So I don't need to pick up the hand controller to navigate, which is definitely a welcome change from the sim rig that I'm used to, where I have to use a keyboard and mouse all the time. So hit on controllers here, and you can see here all of our common controllers are showing up. If we were to click on, say, the Thrustmaster TGT, we can see all our mappings and a nice little graphic of the wheel there. Now, unfortunately, at the time of shooting the video, the GT DD Pro isn't showing up in the menu. I would imagine by the time you guys have your hands on your bases, this should be showing up. Potentially, the people that have got the early shipping option may not, but again, this is just me guessing. I don't know, but yeah, I'm confident that it will show up in the menu here, and once it does, we'll be able to go in and adjust all of our mappings to our heart's content. But at least at this point in time, we do have the basic controls up and running, and I can run you through a couple of things. So let's quickly jump in a car, and I'll talk a little bit more about how exactly the inputs work, particularly the 4 5-way hat switches that we have around the wheel. So as mentioned, we do have these 4 hat switches on the wheel, which are 5-way switches, so we can push them left, right, up, down, or click them in. And these are easily reachable as well while we're driving, so we can easily put our thumbs across, at least with my size hands, and I do have quite girly hands, let's be honest. You can reach them quite easily, and yeah, not a problem at all. Now, the real advantage here when compared to something like a Logitech G923, for example, with the G923, and remembering again, you can map common controls. What we had to do is use the plus or minus to thumb through the menu, and kind of like if you look down on the right hand side now, you can see if I push to the left and right with my hat switch, I can go through the various options on the menu there, and then I can use up and down to control them. So if I want to adjust my fuel map, I have to go across to the fuel map and then push up or down to make adjustments. Now, what that means is when you're driving, you have to take your eyes off the road and be distracted from what you're doing to actually look across and see where you are on the map. Now, with the hat switches, all you need to do is just push up and down on the hat switches themselves. And I would imagine, again, once we are able to configure the controls and map them, we would be able to change it to left or right if we wanted to. But for now, up and down changes our fuel. If we push the red one up and down, it instantly changes across to brake balance. You can see that's adjusting, and blue will change our traction control adjustment. So when we're driving, we're able to very easily make those changes on the fly. All we need to do is just quickly glance to see what the reading is. And you've got your familiarity there with the controls just in your muscle memory. So if you want to make a change, you just simply move your thumb across, make the change, and you're good to go. Now, the yellow one down on the right hand side as well, if we jump into a rally car, you can see in the rally car, I'm able to change my torque distribution using the same switch. So up and down does exactly the same. So depending on the car that you're driving will determine which options you have available to you with the controls, but that is how those buttons work. And look, ergonomically, otherwise, I think we pretty much covered everything in the review. The 280mm design is quite comfortable. I think it suits a wide variety of different driving styles as well. The only thing I do wish is that it did have a completely round surface rather than having the flat bottom. Just for drifting and sliding, it does bump around in your hands a little bit if you're really getting sideways. And again, I'll let the people who are more experienced with drifting really comment on that. But for me, that is one thing that I would definitely prefer. But other than that, everything is relatively easily accessible from the wheel while you're driving. Just a couple of other things I did notice. The L2, R2, L3, and R3 buttons are a little bit of a stretch, so you will have to curve your hands around a little bit to reach those. So you may, for example, want to have the push down function of your green and red, or your blue and yellow as your DRS, ERS, and so forth for cars that may have those functions. And you just may want to try and avoid using L2, R2 for things that you're going to be wanting to push all the time. Maybe reserve it for something like a pit limiter or something like that. But again, that's going to be purely a subjective thing, and it will depend on your hand size as well. But for me, the 4 hat switches at least are very convenient to reach. If you are using the buttons for your handbrake as well, that's one other thing to consider. You may have a little bit of trouble. I generally have circle mapped to my handbrake, and I can reach down to that when I need to. But again, it's just going to depend on the style of driving that you're doing, and size of your hands, and so forth. One other thing I will just quickly mention as well, if you are drifting and sliding the wheel through your hands, you will just need to be a little bit careful of that hat switch because it is plastic. There were a couple of occasions where it did bump against my hand as the wheel was spinning around. And remembering with a strong wheelbase like this, even at the 5 Nm mark, I would imagine that if the wheel really did whip around on you, you could potentially catch that and break it off with your hand. So you will just need to be mindful of that. But other than that, really nothing to add in addition to what we already covered in the review, I don't think. The rubber grip feels really nice as well. We haven't had any issues at all with wear and tear yet, and we have put probably a good 4 or 5 hours of use into the wheel so far. And as we mentioned in the full review, we do have a similar rubber on the McLaren GT3 wheel. We've been using that for many, many months now, for hours and hours and hours a week, and no signs of wear and tear on that either. So I do think that this will wear quite well. The wheel is really nice and light as well, which I don't think is going to impact the driving experience too much at 8 Newton meters. But for those of you running with the 90 watt power supply at 5 Newton meters, obviously the less rotating mass you have, the more responsive the wheel can be overall. But again, I don't think that's going to be a significant factor, just something to be aware of. And you know, the shifters feel adequate. They're nothing particularly remarkable. They don't have magnetic paddles or anything like that to give you, you know, a really nice positive sensation, but they do what they need to do. I haven't had any problems with missed shifts. We do have the rev gauge at the top here as well, which I believe is going to be a little bit more integrated into GT7. So we'll revisit that when GT7 comes out. We do have access to the tuning menu from here as well, so we can make those adjustments to our settings on the fly. And again, we did cover that in the full review of the base earlier. And yeah, all these controls are mappable on PC as well. So if you plug this into a PC, you can control every single button and map it to your heart's content. And I think that covers pretty much everything. So there you have it, guys. I hope this has given you a good understanding of what you can expect from GT Sport with the GT DD Pro. Now, I guess for me, obviously not being particularly experienced with GT Sport, I don't really feel like I'm in a position to make any strong recommendations here to you guys. I'll let you guys make your own conclusions from what you've seen objectively in the video, of course. But for me, I think, you know, if I were a diehard GT Sport fan, I was playing this game all the time, I think, you know, what we've observed here today is the experience that we're having here is on par with what we saw in other sim titles as well. So I think, you know, all the observations that we made with the CSL DD as well as the GT DD Pro all stand true here as well. There's nothing that we've seen today here that's fallen outside our expectations. So I would say if you're looking at upgrading to one of these from an existing belt-driven or cog-driven wheelbase, then it definitely is a significant upgrade. You're going to feel more detail, you're going to feel more sort of control in what's going on with the car, more communication of what the car's doing through the wheel. Obviously, we're not talking about pedals in this video, so go and check out the CSL pedal review if you want to see more detail on that. But yeah, it definitely is a step up from any belt-driven wheel, and the experience is consistent with what we experienced in all the other titles that we tested as well. So I think that pretty much sums it up, guys. Hopefully you found the video interesting and useful. As always, if you have, please do leave a thumbs up. And if you do want to pick up one of these or anything else that you've seen in our videos, there will be some links down in the description below as well. Those are affiliate links, so they go a long way towards helping out with the channel. And thanks again to Fanatec for sending this across for us to check out. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.